welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. You're the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 9th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, we're coming to the realization that we won't have football on the weekends down here in the South, which is a mighty depressing time because we don't know of any other sport. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. Regardless of sports playing and not playing, they're always available.
They always do their job. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars never stop arriving. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing. You know, I kind of miss football too, Big C. It's like something that you get used to, like a bowl of chocolate ice cream. You really love it while you got your face in it, but when it's gone, you really do miss it when it's gone, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you never miss your well until the water runs dry, Charlton.
Yeah, in all fair and loving war, I will never, ever pause or run dry on the Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, in this great country that we're supposed to be living in, we lose over 24 vets a day to suicide, a horrific number. You would think that there would be more interest paid to our veterans from all of our administrations in the past and present to find a way to stop this suicide of these great veterans that have served this country regardless of time. They've always been there to answer the call, Charlton, and this country needs to answer the call to the veterans' need to prevent suicide. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but it's a greater need than just that.
Yep.
It needs to be more of a concerted effort on every level of American citizens and politics. I know the country's going through an impeachment. I know the country's going through a pandemic. But our veterans have always been there for us. We need to always be there for them.
Big C, I love doing our part like a bowl of chocolate chip cookie dough and Rocky Road ice cream. I love eating it, and I love having this number we can give out, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get our veterans some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams do it too. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can leave about opportunities there. Most of our loans are underwritten by Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage. Big C, I also want to thank Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Big C, I gotta say something to you. It's a pretty sad dog that won't wag his own tail, and there's nothing wrong with that. I remember sometimes when I was a little boy, I would go across the street, and there was a pastor that would do our haircuts. He would get our haircuts, and sometimes you hear some of the old men from the church. They were down there too, getting out of the chair, and they all bragged about who the pastor gave the best haircut to. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's one of the things that I don't have to worry about in the latter years of my life, Charles, being follically challenged.
Yeah.
You know, I look in the mirror and the hair just keeps disappearing.
Yeah, it's all fair level where there's a couple of NBA players. Man, just cut it all off. What are you holding on to? Why don't you just let it all hang out or fall out? I cut it all off. I've been shaving my head since I was in college. When a good old boy by the name of Reggie, his cousin played football at USC, Big C, and he used to cut everybody's hair on the football team. And I was thinking, you know what? My pastor charges $2, but Reggie gave his haircuts for free, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, he didn't understand the price of economics, Charlton, at that time.
Yeah.
E-commerce.
Yeah, the pastor was not doing it for free. He was giving the money to God, if that makes sense to you. But I really do appreciate Pastor James from way back in the day. Big C, I wanna tell you, I feel today it's kind of hot in Northern California. I think it's still wintertime. I know spring doesn't show up here for at least another month, right around the 21st of March, from what I understand. But I think Mother Nature got a little bit confused on it. But I want to just bring up this thought. I know we talk so much about football and basketball and baseball and soccer and so many other things. I was invited to be on the Council of Elders. I don't consider myself an elder, Big C, but I got a couple of older guys that are businessmen and clergy. They actually listened to our show, and they were saying, man, you guys do a great job. We want to have you be on the Council of Elders to try to give youth some ideas on how to go forward and quit begging for people to give them things, but create it yourself. Big C, I think that's a good thing. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I always felt that if you read and you understood what was going on in your environment, it gave you a tremendous opportunity to try to get ahead.
Yeah.
And that's the number one thing you can do. You can listen to anybody talk.
Yeah.
But unless you can comprehend through reading, Charlton, and holding that within, it means nothing to you.
Yeah. And I listen, people don't have to like everything. I told you I think my favorite ice cream is Rocky Road ice cream. I also like mixing it with a chocolate chip cookie dough. But I did hear, and again, people can criticize us. Some people say I talk too fast. I tell some people they listen too slow. It's all fair, let the word Big C. But I did hear there's a famous athlete that has a podcast, and he was telling people to listen to his podcast, and it actually tagline before our show. So I thank them for the sponsorship. At the same time, his whole program was about, I'm the best. And if anybody doubts I'm the best, then they're going to have a rude awakening when they go up against me. That's all there is to it. I'm the best, and nobody's better than me, and that's all there is to it. How did someone give him a podcast?
Well, I mean, think about that for real, Charlton.
Yeah.
If you're not confident in yourself and your ability in whatever you're doing, why even try? If you walk out there and saying, I'm the second best, I'm the 14th best out there, then you're really not even trying. You always have to go out there believing that you are the best.
Yeah.
You have to announce to people that you are the best.
Yeah.
And if you continue to try to strive for that, then you can always accomplish that goal. I never went into an athletic event, Charlton, thinking that I wasn't better than anybody that I was facing on the field.
Yeah.
I always thought, whether it was on a basketball court, baseball diamond, the track and field event, or even a football field, Charlton, I always felt that I was the best there was. And regardless of whatever I've done, people can judge you, people can grade you, but unless you think you're the best, why even participate?
Yeah, well, sometimes a book has more on the inside of the cover as opposed to I'm the best. It's all fair love and war. But the point is, whatever you're going to do, just do it. It doesn't matter how many people like it. Some people, again, they say I talk too fast. I say many people listen too slow. But I am the best, if that makes sense. I thought my brother was doing his thing. He just said I'm the best, and that's what you're going to find out when you hear my podcast. But what I want to do, I do think we are the best, Big C. But I want to also pay homage to Black History Month. While a singular month is not going to make up for a historical foundation of racism to deal with what's happened in this country, there's so many exhibits that are available online that can actually start filling in the gap. And I think about what the NFL is trying to do when James Brown was saying to Roger Goodell about the lack of African-American men in the coaching ranks. The NFL is about 75% African-American. The coaching ranks is about 3% of the league, Big C. If we flip the script and you woke up in the morning and there were only 4 white coaches in the NFL, a lot of people would have a problem. It would dominate media that you are 25% of the league, but you only have 4 jobs or 3 jobs in the league. That would make a lot more noise than it does when it comes to black men. But if you go online, you'll find out there's a lot of things that deal with black Americans. Whether you can Google arts and culture, Black History Month collection, for a centralized source of online learning opportunities, you can check out Black History Month and the collection on Google Arts and Culture sites. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, the exposure to black history is becoming more and more relevant in today's society in America.
Yeah.
You know, this is something that when I was growing up, we didn't even realize there was a black history, Charlton. It was omitted from all the textbooks. Slavery was omitted from the textbooks.
Yeah.
We didn't have black neighborhoods in textbooks, Charlton. They acted as black society never existed in America. We were never told of our rich culture and heritage as we were growing up. And now it's become more and more prevalent in American society, and it's at the touch of a fingertip anytime you turn on a computer.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a lot like when I opened the show with it. I think the professional basketball player, that tagline on Big C Sports, and so I really do appreciate that he says he's the best, so that's fine. Anyone can say they're the best, like my pastor that gave us haircuts. And some of the old guys would come around and argue about who he gave the better haircut to, Big C. But it's all fair level war. Everybody's got to brag about being the best. But when I look at black culture, it is the best because all life came from Africa. And when I say all, I mean all. Dr. Mendel and Dr. Gregory and Mendel. Big C, it's so important because what you just said to me, I didn't know that you didn't know much about black history growing up. And as a lot of people, they think that we got to focus on it in the month of February. But for African Americans, every day is a lesson in being black in America, Big C outside. Your thoughts?
Well, no, I mean, we live black history every day in America, Charlton.
Yeah.
It's our culture.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at the oppression that has been put on black people throughout the time in America, that is black history. It has never stopped.
Yep.
When you think about segregation, you think about racism. That's black history in America.
Yeah.
We've been oppressed the whole time that we've been in this country. And for people to say that it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter, they weren't around and they didn't own slaves, doesn't matter. You're still part of perpetuating the myth and the problem that black people are less than white people.
Yeah, but let me ask you this question because we've accomplished so much, even swimming against the current, and just like athletes sometimes swimming against the current, it may not seem fair, but it does make you stronger. I don't know any bench less weights on the bench press or on the squat. They always try to bench more because the more they build their bodies fighting against the depression or the pressure, then they tend to overcome. And I guess that's why a lot of people are saying we shall overcome someday. But think about this. If you think about how mainstream can Google, because Black History Month is not for black Americans, we live it every day. I think mainstream, what they may learn if they go into Google about some of the collections of black artists, like the Smithsonian's African American art, the Harlem Renaissance, the Civil Rights era, and beyond, Big C, biographies of famous black Americans, including there's a sculpture by the name of Edmona Lewis and civil rights lawyer Pauli Murray, as well as personal letters from modern black celebrities. And there's a lot of people that only think about since Martin Luther King and current. They don't think about before him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the theme from We Shall Overcome, Charlton, is the oppression. It was the killing of black people by white people in America. That's what they wanted to overcome. They wanted to overcome the day that they could walk down the streets of America. Not talking about achievement of business and equality, Charlton, but talking about we shall overcome not surviving.
Yeah.
That's what black people were so prevalent about in those years when those songs were so salient, Charlton, and they were singing them all the time because white people would kill black people with impunity in America.
Yeah.
They still do it, but they did it with more relevance back in those days.
Yeah. There's a movie that I was watching over the weekend. I guess it was, I don't know, Saturday night or Sunday. It's been around for many, many moons. It was simply called Detroit, and it was about the homicide that was committed by by some law enforcement officers against black Americans. We're going to talk about that later in the show because I think it's so important that it's always something that when we ask society to fix things, they always ask black people to ask people who are hurting them to stop hurting me. That's like, I heard Chris Rock, he was talking to Gayle King on the program, and I love Chris Rock's comedy. He said something to the point that we are going to use dialogue or conversation to make things better. And he mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing, that if someone stops beating you up, does that make things better? Or have they just paused on beating you up? They still have the power to beat you up over and over again, whether it's criminal justice system, educational system, the healthcare system, the employment system. They still have the power because of how they're set up in society to continue beating you up again. So equality really is not based on someone decided to stop beating you up. It's when you can beat them up with the same force. Mix of your thoughts.
Well, that's why I say the Constitution is the worst piece of paper that was written, Jonathan, because it doesn't call for equality for black people in the Constitution. They never made an amendment to say that black people were more than two-thirds of a human being. And as long as that is in writing in America, that is their national anthem, Jonathan, is that we will never have equality in this country. They will always beat us up. I mean, this is what's going on in the Senate right now with this impeachment trial.
Yeah.
They're beating up black people. They're trying to say everything that happened during Black Lives Matter protests because blacks were tired of being killed in the streets back in the summer, that what Trump did in his insurrection on the 6th of January was the same. Matter of fact, it was less violent than what the black people were doing, asking for social justice, not trying to overturn a government.
Yeah, it's ironic. Just like with Black history, we live it every day because I was telling the Council of Elders, a lot of these guys are in their 60s and 70s, and they were asking me, I think I'm a young man. I kind of felt proud that they want me to be a part of the older conversation. But the funny thing is, Big C, when I saw the insurrection and I see what's happening is people are just focused on sports while this thing is happening right now in our nation's capital. People are still talking about, sports. If you want to see the best athletes, just tune into a sports show. But what else do you learn that can help you get through life? As we talk about sports and love it, it's in Black History Month. People got to get this. Sometimes the universe, it will do things and line things up. Black History Month. Don't take this for granted. You're not going to learn this on the guy that's tagging our show saying he's the best ever, and that's okay. In Black History Month, they're setting a trial to impeach the only twice impeached president in the history of the United States, and Donald Trump. And the impeachment was over the insurrection, but the insurrection was caused by trying to throw out black votes, tens of millions of black votes. In Black History Month, they're doing the impeachment trial, and some of the decent Republicans said, yeah, that little boy did wrong, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the whole crux of it is that they were trying to throw out the black vote.
Yeah.
This is what has always been done, Charlton, since the 15th Amendment, when blacks got the right to vote in America.
Yeah.
Is that white people have continuously tried to throw out their votes and discredit them, disenfranchise them. And this is the same thing that Donald Trump has tried to do.
Yeah.
Tried to disenfranchise black people and sent white people to attack the nation's capitals and lawmakers, saying that since they accepted the votes of those black people, that they were treasonous amongst America.
Yeah.
So that shows that equality really is not advanced in America when you're trying to throw out and disenfranchise black votes.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Not making fun of anybody. People can make fun of me. They say I talk too fast. I say they listen too slow. But we're doing this show today while most of the sports universe, they're saying, Patrick Mahomes is going to have a toe operation. Well, we knew something was wrong with his toe back in the game against Cleveland, Big C. But the thing is, that's more important than that. As the NFL, the black men are begging for job interviews. Okay, they're saying we only got 3 black coaches. We need more. So maybe the white guys will give them one more coach for the next season, Big C, even though they've always been hired. But at that same time, Big C Sports will talk about sports, and people can Google this. We're also going to talk about the former president of the United States trying to disenfranchise black voters in 2020, and they're going to have an impeachment trial that's approved today. 2 days after Super Bowl 55, Big C, and only Big C Sports is talking about the guys who are begging for a job. There's a lot more sinister stuff than that. They're still trying to kick your butt out of voting, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you think about what Donald Trump did, Charlton, he told his MAGA rally to go attack those white people that allowed those black votes to be counted and to go through as legitimate votes. That's what he did.
Yep, and he said they were saying hang Mike Pence, and Mike Pence still wouldn't stand up. He still wouldn't hold his head up. He still kept his head down, even though they had a nuisance that hang Mike Pence, and Mike Pence at the same time was trying to help Donald Trump throw out the black vote, and the black people are trying to save his butt by showing up and voting. It's all fair and love and war. But when you go to those sites and you Google anything about black history, there's also a central database, Big C, of online accessible exhibits from museums and cultural institutions all across this great country. In fact, many are listed, as well as Carnegie Hall's interactive tribute to civil rights leaders and the National Park Services. It's a virtual walkthrough of African American heritage sites. And while it's so important to do that, Big C, it's also important to Google everything we tell you. We're going to tell you more than what's happening with Patrick Mahomes' big toe, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, it's very important for anybody, regardless of race or culture, to be salient about your surroundings and understand what your forefathers went through and where you come from.
Yeah.
And how you've gotten to the point of life where you are.
Yeah. It's important, and I want people to know that it's okay to say you're the best. But if you're the best, at least elucidate on things outside of just you. When Big C Sports is long gone from the universe, if that makes sense to you, hopefully people can Google the archives, Big C, and they can realize a lot of things that we said were true, and it was about what's more important than just, can I get interviewed for an NFL job? It's about, will me and my children still have the chance to go in and vote? NFL football, just case in point, I'm so proud of young black men not waiting for someone to tell them, boy, you can go talk about what I tell you to talk about now. This is important to me, Big C, because I know there are times when many people have said, man, you guys talk too much politics, but now the whole world's doing politics. Every single one of them, unless they're dumb. Here's a guy that I really appreciate, Chase Young, Washington football team. His teammates Dontrell Inman, Big C, and Nick Sandberg, they testified. Big C, I'm telling you, this is happening right now. They testified to support police reform in Maryland, Big C. Defensive end Chase Young, who's going to be, in my opinion, just an all-pro year after year, whose father was in law enforcement. His father was in law enforcement. And here he is, testified before the Maryland House Judiciary Committee on today, expressing support for police reform, not defunding the police, but just some reform so that we can realize that's not necessary to treat black Americans any different than you treat white Americans, aka the insurrection. The police officers stood by as people were beaten over, and even some lost their lives. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, this goes back to when Anquan Bolden was a member of the San Francisco 49ers. He and a group of NFL players sat in front of Congress and exercised that same option, Charlton, to talk about police reform.
Yeah.
But as we still look, almost a decade later, things have not changed. And will they ever change? As long as police have immunity against killing black people, it's not going to change, Charlton. When you get rid of police immunity as far as killing black people, that's the only time it's going to change. You can sit down and have dialogue today as well as they did 8 years ago, Charlton, and you can do it 8 years from now. It will still be the same until you get rid of police immunity on killing black people.
Yeah.
You look at what happened at the Capitol, and look how many people were arrested that day at the Capitol. Look how many people were hit with tear gas bombs, Charlton, and rubber bullets at the Capitol. Compare that to Black Lives Matter when Donald Trump wanted to go take a photo op over at St. James Church across the street from the White House. How many people were abused by police and law enforcement compared to those white people at the Capitol?
Yeah, that's very well said, Big C. And as I encourage you also, I mean, this is important. And anyone listening, these are football players. They're not dumb. They're not the shut up and dribble or shut up and tackle kind of guy. And it's led by a black man whose father, family member in law enforcement, Big C. It's also something that people can Google. It's called House Bill 670. House Bill 670. People should Google that. It's so important. It's more important than Patrick Mahomes getting surgery on his toe or Tom Brady getting his 7th Super Bowl championship, Big C. It would repeal the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. Among other things, it would also authorize a judge to issue a no-knock search warrant only under certain circumstances. It would also make an individual attending a public institution of higher education exempt from paying tuition if the individual intends to become a police officer under certain circumstances. So it's giving them power as opposed to not giving them power, but it's also making them answer to the law, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you need to understand the difference between the House and the Senate. Bills go from the House to the Senate to die. We've seen that for the last 16 years, that they've gone from the House to the Senate to die, because those Republicans would not allow those bills to pass to protect blacks in society. When you got 50 white Republican senators, Charlton, they're not going to protect black society.
Well, that's why you have Vice President Kamala Harris with the deciding vote, Big C. But everybody has to start somewhere, because this did not happen under the Trump administration. Trump said no. Nothing's wrong with law enforcement. We're not going to do anything. In fact, he said rough them up when you arrest them. So things have changed already. You just got to be able to see the forest for the trees, Big C. Young. He's an all-pro player, in my opinion, year after year coming up. He said that when he was young, that he wanted to go into law enforcement. Now he's an NFL football player. He says he still might do so someday. I doubt if he'll do that when he has $100 million in the bank, Big C. But his family's history of working in law enforcement, it prompted him to support the bill. Despite that, he said he still worries about some of the police behavior in the community where he grew up, and how sometimes they would drive up to 7 to 11 in a nice Mercedes-Benz and ask, why are you giving me this look? And sometimes that becomes numb. It's like everyday life. We don't need Black History Month to tell us that. But he talks about having access to millions of dollars in money. Sometimes people think, oh, my life was so much easier. Sometimes it makes you more of a target. Like, how'd you get that car, Big C? I know you heard that before. Your thoughts?
Well, if you've ever been to Columbus, Ohio, then you would understand that one of the most racist, divisive cities in America as far as police abuse among its black citizens, Charlton. I mean, it's an atrocious area for black people to live in, and they're always consistently abused by the police department. And what black people achieve, and if you're not in an all-black area, Charlton,
yeah,
you're going to get that type of treatment and abuse. Is this your car? Where'd you get it from? You know, I got it from the same place you get yours, except it's a different dealer that costs more.
Yeah. Chris Rock said that he was driving around his neighborhood, and the police asked him, so, what are you doing in this neighborhood? And he said, I live in this neighborhood. The question is, what are you doing in this neighborhood? You can't afford a $4 million house. It's all fair. It's nothing more. I thought it was funny the way Chris Rock told it, because a lot of celebrities and a lot of African Americans that I've known over the years that make tens of millions of dollars, sometimes that's when the trouble begins, because they get targeted and they get pigeonholed, and people want to know, well, what are you doing in this neighborhood? It happened to me many times when I lived over in Walnut Creek, California, over there in the East Bay. It's all fair and love and war. You just pray and do the right thing. Take your time. Yes, sir, no, sir, officer. But it's not right that anyone should ever have to go through that garbage. So final thing I want to say on that is Washington football players that are testifying today. We have an impeachment that's going voted for by Democrats and some Republicans to get rid of a person from ever running for office again. The same kind of person that wanted to throw out the votes of people who look like me, you, and touchdown Patrick Mahomes. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if you remember a picture of some great athletes in the late 60s, Charlton, that had a financial summit. Those same athletes met with politicians in Washington also. Lou Alcindor, who's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, several other professional athletes, Charlton. They met with Congress, doing the same thing that those Washington football players did today.
Yeah.
This is 1967, Charlton. Do the math, count the number of years, and they're still asking for the same thing in 2021 that they were asking for in 1967.
Yeah, well, they can always give up. So they probably, if anyone says it's never going to change, then there's no need being part of the conversation. But a lot of smart people, they're putting their heads together, and they may have to knock another year or another 2 years.
What is the resistance? That's my point. What is the resistance when you have these black men, these prominent black men that have been coming to you for 54 years, asking you the same thing, and even before those prominent black athletes and entertainers went in and asked Congress, Charlton, black people have always asked that question. Why is it so difficult for white people to give us equality in America, to give us a piece of the apple, so that we don't have to fight, we don't have to scratch, we don't have to beg? We should not have to. We are Americans. And this crap that we have to go through year after year, about going in, sitting in front of congressmen and senators, Charlton, asking for equality. We voted for your butt to be in the office.
Yeah.
But yet you don't want to give us equality after you've gotten our vote. And ever since black people have been voting legally, Charlton, since they amended the Voting Rights Act, everybody comes out and stumps for the black vote, talking about what they're going to do for black people. If they're going to do it, why do we have to keep going in front of them saying, can you pass these laws to help us out?
Yep, very well said. And we're going to talk more about that when we come back from the Big C pause. But I want you to think about the question you just answered. You just answered the question. But we're going to take the Big C pause. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, with the help of Dick Vermille's permission, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps that you can follow Big C Sports, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Also want to thank Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. All you got to do is, just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phone and say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear and see all of our applications. Sometimes you can speak it into existence, Big C, but it wasn't always that way. You do got to speak it into existence. You were asking, why do we got to keep coming in forward and coming in front of Congress and asking law enforcement to treat us fair? Well, that's part of what House Bill 670 is for. It's in writing, and it is asking for it to be signed into law. And people have to vote for it, Big C. It has to pass in the House and the Senate and signed by the president. If there's a tie in the vote, Kamala Harris, the vice president, is the deciding vote. So it's going to be signed into law, Big C. At the same time, I've also asked myself that same question that you bring up all the time. You say some things won't change. You say the Constitution's a bad document. All I would ask you to do is present a document that's not a bad document. And if you think things won't change, then why would people change if you're cynical that they're going to change? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about blacks having opportunity. We're in the Constitution as 2/3 of a person, Charlton. Why can't that amendment be changed? Why has society never decided to change that since you say America's equal and we get our opportunity? If you go in there, Charlton, and you ask for change, and you're only 2/3 of what you're representing, how are they ever going to look at you as an equal? When in writing it says that you never will be an equal. That's what the Constitution says about black people in America. So you want to know why black people have to struggle and fight all the time, and these laws die in Congress and in the Senate, Charlton? Because they don't look at black people as being whole.
Yeah.
And so how can you get somebody that's less than you to make them equal to you until you change the Constitution? If you see somebody walk up, Charlton, and they say, hey, I'm going to join you on that bottle that you're buying there at the liquor store, okay? But I only got 50 cents, and I know the bottle costs, $1.50.
Yeah.
Well, $2.
Yeah.
Okay, they got 50 cents. Are you going to share it with them equally, or are you going to give them less?
Yeah. It's all fair and love and war. I think you brought up a great point, but you got to also understand that Big C Sports has only been around since 2015. And I'm not saying that we're the everything, but like the guy on the show, the NBA player said, I'm the best, and you'll find out when you play me that I'm the best. I'm just asking people, because laws are changed in writing and between the House and the Senate and signed by the president, there's something, the conversation to bring forward. Because a lot of people, they've been trained to talk about Patrick Mahomes' toe. That was the most important thing to a lot of black Americans today, based on sports shows and what their white media producers tell them. Talk about Patrick Mahomes' toe, and if Russell Wilson's mad that he can't get people to block for him. They didn't talk about the insurrection. They didn't talk about police reform or the Bill 670 that we just talked about. They learned that from Big C Sports. And when you got people that talk about it, maybe it gets to the people at the top, and then they put it in writing, and it's signed by the House and Senate and the President. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, it's not going anywhere. I've witnessed this for 54 years. 54 years I've watched this same circle go round and around. And what does the circle do? It goes round and around, keeps coming back to the same starting point and the same ending point. When they make it a law, let me know that I was wrong.
Well, that's where you are wrong. Because the people that you say don't like black people, when they hear you say they're never going to change, they say, you're right, boy, we're not going to change. I think part of what you got to do is look at the guy in the mirror and ask yourself, why would someone fight for something that you don't believe is going to change? I think that's part of what you got to do. In fact, I think that's part of what everybody has to do. A law has three sides, Big C. It has the defense, it has the prosecutor, and it has the judge. If the prosecutor says, we're going to go against you, and the defense say, well, okay, I believe in you. I believe you shouldn't do anything to advocate for me. Then why would they listen to you? Your argument has to be what you want.
Look at what happened at the Capitol, Charlton, on that insurrection. When you had not 100 white people arrested, not 100 of them, Charlton, but look what happened on Black Lives Matter protest, Charlton, on a march that they had in Washington. Matter of fact, the new senator from Georgia was one of that was elected, Warnock.
Yeah.
They arrested 342 black people that day, Charlton, 342. The new senator from Georgia, Warnock, was one of them that was arrested on that day. And I'm going to quote to you the late, great Richard Pryor. He said he went to court one time looking for justice. And that's what he found, just us in there. Not justice, just us.
Yeah, but I think you don't understand your point that you're making. You just made a point for you say the people that hate you. So if you tell the people who hate you that it's never going to change, then why would they listen to your argument? They say, you're right, boy. It's not going to change.
Well, what is the incarceration rate, Charlton, in America? What's the percentage of incarceration rate? I believe we're 13% of American society in America. You realize we have the same incarceration rate in America as we do percentage of players in the NFL? Think about that. When we have the same incarceration rate in America as black people as we do have black people in the NFL, is that equality?
No, but I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you the third time. If you're telling the people that hate you that nothing's ever going to change, would you believe they're listening to you when they don't make change? So what could you do to look at that person in the mirror and say, maybe my argument is wrong. Maybe I got to hire a different attorney that's going to advocate for what I want. So instead of telling people who don't like you that nothing's going to change and they say, you're right, boy, what would you tell them to get them to see things your way if you believe that what you want is going to be justifiable? Big, say your thoughts.
Well, you always say it's all fair in love and war. Do you feel that these people are good people that are advocating for change in society?
The people who advocate for change, yeah. I believe this got this.
So why don't they just do it? Why don't the politicians just do it? Why should we have to go ask for what our inalienable rights are as Americans? Why don't they just give them to us? Why do we have to beg, plead, kowtow, try to get laws passed from our perspective? Why don't they just do it? What's so difficult about creating equality in America? Why should we have to go beg and plead and ask for what they should just automatically do if they care about us as American citizens?
Because we are a nation of the law, Big C. And just like there's a law.
But they make the laws, Charlton. That's my point. If we're a nation of laws, what's so difficult about them, passing that law? Just like you said about Chris Rock. When somebody can beat you up and they stop beating you up, it doesn't mean they can't beat you up some more. Maybe they needed a break. They just got tired at that moment, and they'll come back and beat you up some more. That's the same thing we've gotten from all these politicians over the decades. Every time we get a group of prominent black athletes go in and ask for equal rights in America, whether it was from Dr. Martin Luther King to any of these athletes, ask for us to have equality in America, to give us the right to vote. And then they stripped it from the Supreme Court a few years ago.
Yeah.
They stripped the Voting Rights Act away from us. They made it more difficult for us to vote. Why do we have to keep fighting for what they say we deserve as people?
Because there's good and evil in the world, and when you go into a court of law, you have the judge, you have the prosecutor, and you have the defense attorney.
We're not talking about a civil suit. We're talking about politicians. Civil suits are totally different from politicians. You don't have a jury there. You're talking about these politicians that we vote into office. There's not a judge changing the law. Judges don't change laws. We're talking about politicians. You're talking about a civil suit. Two totally different parameters. You can go into court all day long. All you do is end up in prison. We're talking about people changing laws in Washington so we don't end up in prison.
And that's what you fail to understand. there's a prosecutor, and there's a defense attorney. Do you think every person that's on the side of the defense attorney would say to the judge, why don't you just give me what I want? Why I got to get someone to argue my point of view? The prosecutor doesn't care your point of view. They don't want you to have what you want. That's why you have the prosecutor and the defense attorney. They go against each other, and the judge and the jury decide. That's just part of America as a nation of the law. You don't have to like it, but that's the way it is. I want to ask you this part too, Big C. It goes into Russell Wilson. I want to use him as a metaphor, Big C. Russell Wilson, we call him Houdini Russell Wilson. Touchdown Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks quarterback. He's frustrated by getting hit too much, and he wants more say-so in the Seattle Seahawks decision-making, Big C. He said that he's frustrated by the amount of times that he's been hit throughout his career, and he expressed his desire to be more involved with the team personnel. He's been sacked 394 times. That's a lot for an all-pro player. 394 times in his career, and that's according to stats that are out there. That's more than any other quarterback that's active, and that's most in a player's first 9 seasons since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger. Randall Cunningham is next at 366. Would you believe that all he would have to do is go tell the defensive players that are sacking him, would you please stop sacking me because I want to be able to score a touchdown every play? It's not that easy. You got to fight for what you want, Big C. It's a metaphor, but it's a truism, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, you don't talk to the defensive players, Charlton. You talk to the guys in front of you that are blocking and look out. Okay, those are the guys you block. You got to understand, since Russell Wilson has been with the Seattle Seahawks, they have never spent a first-round draft pick on an offensive lineman. This shows that the organization don't give a damn about him, is that they have not cared to draft an offensive lineman in the first round. Yet they've wasted several first-round draft picks on running backs, Charlton, the guys that are behind Russell Wilson. And if they can't pick up yardage, how is Russell Wilson going to be protected? You know, all he's asking for is what prominent white quarterbacks have had a say-so in over the years. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, you know, Drew Brees, those quarterbacks of those natures that have won Super Bowls. They've had say-so in personnel that the teams have brought in. Russell Wilson has had no say-so in personnel that the Seattle Seahawks has brought in. He's had to live with what they put in front of him. And it's been a sham of an offensive line. He's been sacked a record number of times in the NFL since he's taken over as starting quarterback. That shouldn't happen. And he's a mobile quarterback.
Yeah.
So you think about quarterbacks like Brady, who is not mobile, Brees, who is not mobile, Manning, who is not mobile. They were never hit at the rate that Russell Wilson has been hit.
Yeah. You know what, Big C? He has to ask, though, doesn't he? He can't assume, well, it's never going to change because you never drafted a number 1 offensive lineman. But that's the point is you got to ask for what you want. You said it earlier.
Well, no, he's asked for it. They have not allowed him to be in the decision room. And that's what has bothered him. He has told the organization what he's wanted over the years. I need some protection.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a quarterback in the NFL saying, hey, I'm happy getting the crap beat out of me, getting sacked 50 times a year.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I don't think we need offensive line. I think we need another running back. That's what I think we need. I think we need another linebacker because I'm the guy who puts the points on the scoreboard, and I've made my suggestions to the team, but having a legitimate say-so is what he's talking about, is that the organization takes to heart what his feelings are about protecting him and getting them to the next level. You think about since they've been to the 2 Super Bowls, how much Russell Wilson has been hit and how much a decline that offensive line has been. You think he has not voiced his concern over that time?
Yeah, well, at the same time, they're playing against defensive guys that are trying to knock him out. They don't care how much he complains. If he doesn't like what's happening with his team, he can always opt out, Big C. I mean, other players have done it. A lot of guys, if they don't get what they want, they look elsewhere, and he has that choice to do it. But they have made him, I believe, the highest-paid quarterback in the league, and I'm sure they want to get more protection. But if you don't complain, they might think you're okay with it. He did say during the video conference that he wants to have the voice in personnel decisions, and that other top quarterbacks have had, like you mentioned, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, and Wilson made the same point earlier Tuesday in an interview on a TV show that he wants to be involved because at the end of the day, it's his legacy and his team's legacy. It's the guys that get you into the huddle, and the guys at the end of the day, they got to be the guys that you trust. And at the same time, Big C, every person in the NFL, you're not like the guy down at Walmart saying we need some insurance or we need some vision care or health care. The guy making $40 million a year. If he can't speak up, then that's his fault. If they don't give him what he wants, ask for a trade and opt out like Deshaun Watson's doing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's one of the things that's on the table right now is the potential of him moving.
Yeah.
When you think about as quarterbacks go in the NFL, it's about salary cap and dead money. That's the problem why quarterbacks can't move. I mean, when these guys get the money, you know, you can't get them off on another team the following year because you're going to take a financial hit of $40 million of money that you can't spend on other players.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson has spoken his displeasure over time. And like I said, since the Super Bowl, they have done nothing to protect him, to upgrade his protection. They brought in some players, but they never built a line around him to grow with him, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You know, this has been a problem with black quarterbacks throughout the NFL. When you look at the quarterbacks who've had decision-making in their favor, you talk about Manning, Breeze, and Brady.
Yeah.
Those are white quarterbacks. They've always had say-so when you're a white franchise quarterback where you want to see the team go. Black quarterbacks haven't had that power. We pay you, be quiet, throw the ball. That's what they've gotten throughout the history.
Yeah, well, the guy with Russell Wilson's stature, he's speaking up, and sometimes you got to speak louder or just opt out. I mean, you can always opt out instead of saying, well, they won't listen to me. Just opt out. There's a lot of people that will. And speaking of a player that does get a lot of attention, I'm sure he was hoping, and you know, Kansas City had a patchwork offensive line in Super Bowl 55, touchdown Patrick Mahomes. Is going to have surgery on his toe. I guess they call it turf toe. And obviously, it was painful enough to cause him some problems in the playoffs, and it really showed up when he ran for about 500 yards scrambling in Super Bowl 55. But it's obviously something that turf toe, they said, may keep him out for about 4 or 5 months. Big, for your thoughts?
It does, Charlton. I've had the surgery done twice. I had each one of my feet done. It's a very painful injury that you have to deal with, and you can't get it corrected until your season is over. There's not much they can do for it. They inject it. They give you a steel plate in the bottom of your shoe. But it was a problem for him in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's a problem for everybody. There's a lot of guys that are hurt, and they're running around. It was like Drew Brees had I think 11 cracked ribs, and he had to sit out for a couple of weeks, and then he got that to heal up, or they injected him. Whatever they did, they got it to feel better. I think Jared Goff had a broken finger on his hand when they played the game against the Seattle Seahawks, and they beat the Seattle Seahawks, and so the Rams said we want to trade him because he helped us win. A lot of guys play with injuries. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's the league, Charlton. When you come out of training camp, there's nobody helping. So as people think that athletes are going to be healthy throughout the year, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, Mitchell Schwartz hurt his back in the 6th game of the year, his offensive tackle, and he wasn't able to play the rest of the year. That was his right offensive tackle. And you look at Fisher, tore his Achilles, his left offensive tackle.
Yeah.
Duvernay, opted out of the season to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, players deal with injury all the time. Allaire's got hurt, I think, about the 12th week of the season.
Yeah.
And didn't come back until the playoffs with an ankle injury. So that you have to have a lot of admiration for what Patrick Mahomes and what he did. You think about this. This is on his left foot. Every pass he throws, he's leaning on that left foot, pushing off, Charlton. Every time he tries to run, he's on that left foot. So, I mean, he was under an immense amount of pressure for 3 weeks and pain trying to play this game.
Yeah, it's about a game of pain. North Dallas 40, they were injecting all kind of stuff into their bodies so they would not feel pain in North Dallas 40. And speaking of pain, we talk about lack of African-American coaching opportunities, Big C, how 3 of the 4 coordinators in Super Bowl 55 were African-American. And it's just a talk, if you don't, a sad dog won't wag his own tail. But the team with an offensive coordinator that's African-American and defensive coordinator, that's Tampa Bay. They happen to win Super Bowl 55, so much for not being able to coach. But I want to bring another applause. You always talk about how come things haven't changed in some time. Things do change. You got to keep advocating for it. NFL football, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-9 victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. We have 2 women that got the chance to be actually assistants. Lori Locust and Muriel Jadavafar, first female coaches to win us in the Super Bowl, Big C. I think it's important because just like African Americans saying we want more opportunities, women want opportunities too. And if they love football, why not give them opportunities? But they got to ask for it. And men who control it, they got to be willing to open up this door of equal opportunity the same way the WNBA has male basketball coaches, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it wasn't an ask. It was about working your way through the ranks, showing that you had the ability to do the job. That's what professional sports is. Nobody gets a job in professional sports by accident. It's about working your way up through the ranks. You just don't walk and say, hey, I want to be a coach, I want to be an official. It doesn't happen that way. You have to work your way up to the ranks. You got to prove yourself on every level, just like as a player. You have to prove yourself. You don't say, I want the job, and they give it to you. You have to go out there and have all the intangibles in place that make you an expert.
Yeah, well, maybe. The Rooney Rule says otherwise. A lot of guys don't got to prove themselves. They get called. I mean, everybody has their own opinion on that, but sometimes they get called. But for women, I just appreciate they're the same boat that anybody's in. And my thing for the Rooney Rule, I really believe this. It may sound like I'm being flippant, like the guy, the NBA player that tagline on our show said he's the best in the world, and if people doubt him, they can doubt him all they want. But when they get on the court with him, they're going to realize that he is the best. If the NFL were to implement a plan where the coaches on a franchise, if it had to modify the example of players on the field, so if 80% or say 75% of your players are black, make 75% of your coaches black. No one can say that's ever going to happen. But to show how egregious that is, if 25% of your players are white, how are 90% of your coaches white? Big C, your thoughts?
Because 100% of your owners are not minority, Charlton. Well, one of them is. Take that 31% of your owners are not minorities. And when they have a conversation, they want to have a conversation with somebody that looks like them for the most part.
Yeah, well, that has to change with dialogue, and it is going to change. I want to talk about where change happens also. With Black History Month, it's so important. Sometimes the HBCUs kind of get left out of conversation. Howard's men's basketball, they canceled the remainder of the season amid mounting COVID-19 issues. You know, March Madness, Big C, is right around the corner with so many teams that have not been able to play because of COVID. It's the HBCUs that pulled out. I mean, some of their programs, Howard canceled. Not every program has canceled. If you look at Norfolk State, Big C, the latest HBCU program, to not do spring training football because of COVID-19 concerns. I know we talked about Deion Sanders going down to be the head coach at Jackson State. I think they're talking about playing football. It's almost like a day-to-day issue. But when the HBCU, if they look at the CDC where they're saying African Americans have been hit hardest pejoratively with COVID, then some of the smarter HBCUs are saying, wait a minute, I know people want to clap. I know people still can't go to a game, or they're saying limited crowds at a game. We're not going to put our boys out there in a basketball tournament with COVID still raging. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, one of the major reasons why the HBCs canceled, Charlton, is because they're operating in a negative financially. They don't have the huge contracts that the Power 5 conferences have to be on television. So it's a huge negative financial endeavor for the HBCs to try to carry out these seasons without any fans in attendance.
Yeah, and I think if you think about Grambling State, they have so many pro football players that have moved on to the NFL. A lot of other programs down in the SWAC and the MEAC. No bands are allowed for classic games. The SWAC announced a banned travel restrictions for a 2021 spring season. So and again, I ask these young football players and these coaches, they don't get the same kind of money that an Ohio State or a Clemson or Alabama gets. But you have these same issues. COVID-19, if they're going to have a March Madness, we don't know. Well, actually, we do know. They're going to play March Madness. But when you have Jackson State, I just talked about that today. Jackson State, they have paused COVID-19 activities due to COVID-19. And so that's Deion Sanders' new university. I think, again, the black programs and maybe the Ivy League, they're going to lead the rest of the NCAA in how to do things the right way. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, like I said, Charlton, they don't have the financial, ends to test the players like the Power 5 conference when you talk about the HBCUs and the Ivy League. They don't have the huge television revenue to come in where they can test players a couple times a week. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when you don't have vision contracts and you don't pay your coaches millions of dollars, Charlton, you can't play. And you don't have the fans to come into the stands to even offset the revenue that it would take to test the players.
Yeah.
So you can't financially support your sport.
Yep, that's part of it, Big C. Alabama State football coach Donald Hill-Ely, he tests positive for COVID-19. Gonna miss the start of preseason camp And so that's part of what's going on in the HBCUs, Big C. I want to just touch a little bit on something that happened. I think it was last week. I haven't watched too much NBA basketball because I've been focused mostly on what's going on with NFL, starting to put my focus more on NBA basketball. But there was a thing where Kevin Durant for the Brooklyn Nets, Big C, he had also missed a game. I guess they pulled him out of a game while they were actually doing the game. And there was, I guess someone he had been next to was tested positive for COVID. So, of course, he showed some frustration. But in the eyes of frustration, you still have a lot of people that may be frustrated because of a positive negative or a false positive test. But science is going to do its part. You still want to make sure you don't infect other people. And then if you go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they had a lot of people celebrating in the streets of Tampa, Big C, after they won Super Bowl 55. And I'm sure they're going to have more issues that crop up because of that get-together, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, in Tampa, they've lifted all restrictions in the state of Florida. So they're allowed to go around maskless, Charlton, and have large gatherings in that state.
Doesn't make any sense, especially for people that have family members. But it's all fair and love and war. I don't even know what to tell people. There's a part of our society that listens to the facts, and there's a part of our society that won't listen to the facts. But just like the program, as we open, there's an NBA player that said he's the best in the world. In fact, he's the best in the universe. And if people want to find out, they want to doubt him, wait until they play against him. They'll find out what he's talking about. I thought it was pretty braggadocious, but he did that for 30 minutes of his podcast. It's all fair and love and war. I want to bring up another thing that I think is important, because we talk about how things can change, Big C, and maybe things won't change at times. But there's a black governor who was almost a senator, and people ask why was only one black person to serve in the Senate during Reconstruction era. It's because people fought against it. But I look at what's happening today, how things are different. The first time in the history of our country, we've had one president considered the worst president in the history of the universe in the United States. He's loved in Russia and by some of the Southern Confederates. But they're starting the impeachment trial, I think it's going to be this week. And the reason it's happened is because black Americans voted in mass numbers. So for everybody that says things won't change because it hasn't changed in the past, things do change. But change requires that you actively participate in the change you want, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I've always participated in the things that I wanted, Charlton, ever since when I was telling you back in 67, when those guys made a call on politicians that we want change. And even before that, Charlton, black people have asked for change in America. Just like I said, the great poet, late poet Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
A change is going to come. You know, we've been trying for so long, Charlton, that you become frustrated. It's easy to toss words out there, and those words get squashed all the time by the same people, Charlton. Why does the fight have to be so difficult for 400 years in America for black people just to try to get their toe in the sand, Charlton, and get traction? Every time we take a step forward, there's something that comes along from the legal perspective that abolishes what we have as a culture. Just like when the Supreme Court struck down the Voting Rights Act. You think about the highest court in the land, and I know you use court metaphors a lot, but the highest court in the land struck down freedom opportunities for black people to vote, Charlton, in mass. They made it more difficult for them. The highest court in the land. This was argued from all sides, okay?
Yeah.
You had the prosecutor, you had the defense team, and you had the judges. And they said those black people don't need to be able to vote at that level. So they struck down what we fought for decades to try to achieve, equality through voting in America, Charlton, to make it more and more difficult. So we took strides backwards, not strides forward in the Supreme Court, Charlton, trying to gain equality in America.
Yeah, but I want to just bring this up. I know people love sports. Through Reconstruction, there were white northern carpetbaggers. They vied for southern scalawags as the elephant share of the Republican Party. Big C, the Republican Party still exists, okay? But for almost, think about this, the most ambitious black men in the country were also determined to cash in. The two who almost joined each other in the Senate on March 5th, 1875 were no exception. And their story is that they kept fighting against the glass ceiling. They kept fighting against segregation. That was 138 years before Republican Tim Scott of South Carolina was voted into power. It's just like anything else in life. If you want something, there's always resistance. That's maybe gravity has resistance for people who want to jump high. There's always resistance. I guess maybe that's the way the good Lord made things. But you faint not, my friend. We shall overcome, because resistance is part of life. When a mother gives birth to a baby, there's resistance to come out of the womb, Big C. But the mother keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, and then the baby pops out. Maybe not that easy, but ultimately, Big C, comes out. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's a lot of births that there's no resistance at all. The baby just comes naturally.
Very rare.
There's not much pushing involved. So, I mean,
Yeah.
every situation is different. You can't compare them all.
Yeah.
But as we say, we shall overcome, and we're striving to improve and achieve, Charlton. Like I said, the struggle should not be that hard in the land of freedom and opportunity.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, but it is. That's why we have two parties, Big C. They didn't want it to be easy for everybody. The prosecutor, if they got their way,
But there's one America, regardless of two parties. This is America. It's not red. It's not blue. It's America. Show me where America's red. Show me where America's blue. It is not. It's America. It's written in black and white. America, Charlton. And it should not be a struggle. It should not be oppression in 2021. We have oppression in 2021, America, Charlton. Yes, black people have achieved more. There's a lot of black millionaires in America now, more than there were 100 years ago. But there's also more black deaths in America. There's more black incarceration now than there were 100 years ago. So as we look at those who have achieved and have ascended to new heights, look at those that have been left out of the opportunity realm. And every time we lose someone in this incarceration battle, Charlton, regardless of how many people achieve, if you add up the number of black millionaires versus the number of black people that are incarcerated in America, Charlton, you come up with a negative.
Yeah, well, we're still a nation of law. There's three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial, Big C. In each party, you got to advocate for what you want. That's just the way the system is. It's all fair and level war.
Think about the Central Park Five when you say that. You think they advocated not to be in prison, Charlton, for a crime that they did not commit? And that's just a normal line of what goes on in America. When we saw George Floyd murdered in the summer, Charlton, you think he wanted to be murdered because of the justice system allowed him to be murdered? Think about Eric Gardner selling cigarettes in New York, loses his life selling cigarettes. Think about Tavon Martin playing in the park with a water gun, Charlton, and the police come up and shoot him dead, a 14-year-old kid. I mean, we see this day in and day out in America. You think these black people are not advocating to want to live, and yet white society said, we don't have to let you live, and there's no remorse, no restitution against us, no remorse from us. We do this free willingly, and we've always done it as a white culture.
Well, that's where you need more education, Big C. A lot of people are hurt by people who look just like them, but that's a deep issue. But you got to know that too before you start blaming another culture or ethnic group of people for everything that goes wrong in any community, and that's just a fact too.
That's the point that you opened up with when you said those football players were in asking for the police to lose their immunity, Charlton. The same thing. Why are you blaming them for having immunity then?
Well, if you don't understand that most people are injured in their own communities by people who look like them, maybe you got to read more of the stuff that told you to Google.
So why ask for immunity to take away the immunity from police
because
instead of protecting those people in their community from people that look like them?
Well,
when you think about that, that's called straddling the fence right there.
No, it's
when
not.
It sounds good at that point, makes me feel good, then I'm going to advocate for this side.
No, you got to use both sides of your brain, Big C. We live in a big world. A lot of people are injured by people who look just like them. It's not always about law enforcement, but when they are injured, they call law enforcement for the help, and they're asking to fix that part of the justice system. But if we're being honest, there's a lot of people who get caught up and they get injured by people who look just like them, and you know that's true. But it's all fair and love and war. I love bringing black history and real talk, and I hope that more people will do the same. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. With all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking forward to the evaluation of the NFL offseason to see what type of moves the teams are going to make, because all teams are going to be depleted with this reduction in salary cap space, and so teams are going to have to get off some big money contracts. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. Regardless of your contract, you're always there.
You're always there. And if you're always there, rise and shine. We'll be there too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. You can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, as my mother says, it's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.